There is nothing you can do in this world more fulfilling and more satisfying than giving of yourself to others and making a contribution to your community and your state and your nation and your fellow citizens.
On March 16, 1987, Governor Michael S. Dukakis of Massachusetts announced his candidacy for the presidency of the United States. Dukakis won the nomination of the Democratic Party a little over a year later, but was defeated in the general election by George H.W. Bush. In his concession speech on Election Day, Dukakis had a special message for the scores of young people who had supported his campaign. "I hope many of you will go into politics and public service," he said. "It is a noble profession." When he completed his final term as governor and retired from public life, Dukakis returned to his previous vocation of college professor. In this vein, in September 1999, Michael and Kitty Dukakis visited ACT, the American College of Thessaloniki, to inaugurate what was to become the Dukakis Center. As we enter our 20th season of public service initiatives at the Dukakis Center, we celebrate the spirit and legacy of this great American public servant. This is our story.
First of all, I'm really delighted to be at an event sponsored by the Dukakis Center. Again, coming from Massachusetts, Mike Dukakis is one of the giants in Massachusetts politics. But not only Massachusetts. When I was in high school, Mike Dukakis hosted a television show on public radio called The Advocates. And for an adolescent really interested in debate and in public issues, that was just an eye-opening television show. And so people of my generation, we were really inspired to think about national issues by watching that show and then became citizens.
Now more than ever, young people face a challenge. In this time of uncertainty and upheaval, how can they make their unique contribution to the well-being of their communities? The Dukakis Center was created with this challenge in mind.
So we're going to try to accomplish, essentially, by the end of the second day of deliberations tomorrow, to draft a democratic charter for Europe. The purpose of your debates the next 2 days is to try to decide what kind of democracy you want for Europe. What democracy will look like in the next 10, 20, 30 years in your Europe.
Our future depends on how effectively we inspire coming generations to involve themselves in public affairs, how enthusiastic they can become about the task of collective decision-making, and how well we can learn to listen to and appreciate what they have to teach us, their peers, and their elders. The Dukakis Center was launched in 1999 as an endowed chair and transformed in 2011 into a full-fledged university center. In that time, the Dukakis Center has organized and hosted hundreds of public events and educational activities in Thessaloniki and beyond. One of 3 dedicated outreach centers at ACT, the tertiary division of Anatolia College, the Dukakis Center is the proud standard bearer of Anatolia's century-and-a-half-long commitment to civic and social responsibility.
Paramount to ACT's mission is our institution's contribution to society by cultivating students' democratic and civic awareness. The Dukakis Center clearly allows us to realize this mission for our students and beyond, because the center allows us to have a direct communication and linkage to our community here. The role of the university is to prepare the citizens of tomorrow. In every aspect, no matter what the students study, they have to be equipped and ready to become productive members of their respective communities.
It's a place where young people who have not lost themselves in despair, who have hope for the future, who want to do constructive and useful things, come to figure out for themselves the best way to do that, the best way to be of service to the people in their community. The only way you understand what public service is by doing public service. And the center is the place you come to start doing public service so that you understand it and it becomes a value that you hold dear yourself.
In America, I started volunteering at a young age, mostly for selfish reasons. And it was an organization where you would volunteer to mentor sixth graders that were from unprivileged areas of town. They're the ones who got in trouble with the law, the ones who committed crimes, are the ones who skipped school, had bad grades. And there I met a kid named Robert. And before Robert, I really didn't care too much about anyone but myself. It was more just getting into college, getting a good job. Robert, his father had left him when he was young, and he didn't really have a father figure in his life. And I was a 19-year-old selfish kid who didn't really, I didn't know how to tell a young man, why he should be ethical or why he should try to go to college when his parents didn't. And that was my first real experience where I wanted to actually make a change, make a difference. So for me, we started talking about grades, and I worked with him an hour a week for 4 years. His grades have improved, he stopped getting in fights, he stopped getting suspended. And I mean, it changed my outlook on life.
ACT subscribes to a pedagogy of experiential learning, of learning by doing. For 20 years, the Dukakis Center has been a pioneer in the development of innovative learning activities on and off campus. Masterclasses, academic simulations, study trips, debates, blogging, television programming, volunteering and internships, and diverse student-designed civil society projects. Our mission also calls for us to engage actively with the local community and our many constituencies. The center thus hosts a wide variety of major public events annually, including lectures, seminars, conferences, roundtables, and book presentations featuring prominent practitioners, scholars, and journalists. Topics have ranged from foreign policy, political and corporate governance, sustainable development and environmental policy, to historical remembrance and creativity. The Center's flagship program is the renowned series of Dukakis Lectures, which feature high-profile speakers, often in exclusive appearances on and off campus, occasionally in collaboration with partner institutions in Greece and abroad. The common thread in all of these activities is a commitment to inspiring youth to take up active roles in public affairs.
Despite the fact that in every project there are loads of obstacles, the entire process of watching the students come up with an idea and actually put it into practice successfully is hugely enjoyable. It's exhausting, but seeing students actually not be quite sure at the beginning, like, can we actually do this? Seeing them take responsibility, seeing them come up with amazing ideas, seeing them overcome problems, and in the end produce something which is much, much bigger and better than we could have hoped is just fantastic. The two main projects, one of them that I can think about that really kind of reflect this, illustrate this. The first one's the Recycle Monster, in which students came up with a fantastic idea to spread environmental awareness by going around schools and encouraging children not to sit down and learn a whole load of things by heart about the environment, but to create art, monster art, out of trash. The other one was a project called Street Kid to School Kid, and it was a very ambitious project, and in the end we couldn't do the entirety of it because it involved many months of social research that we didn't have time for within the scope of the course. But the idea was to raise awareness and kind of empathy, but not sympathy necessarily, not pity, for kids who are on the street.
We're just starting to learn what our capacity is, what our capabilities are, what types of projects work better than others, how to speak the language of young people today. And I suspect that we are going to multiply the types of activities that we've already done and provide more opportunities for young people, especially for young people who seek to create opportunities for themselves. Let me tell you the story a little bit differently. This was about 5 years ago, one of Michael and Kitty Dukakis' many visits to Thessaloniki, to ACT in Anatolia. And Michael is speaking with a group of senior businessmen and public figures at the residence of the U.S. Consulate General of Thessaloniki. And he says, create opportunities for young people to do internships. Because everybody's really enthusiastic. This is a great idea. Why didn't we think about it? And we spoke at that time with a member of parliament elected from the greater Thessaloniki area. And we said, well, we have some students. We'd like to send a Greek student with an American student and have them do an internship of the sort that's very, very common in the United States. A gentleman whom I know personally, I mean, he's somebody that I think is worthy of admiration, says, yes, sure, have them call my office and, we'll try to arrange something. Well, what do? A week or two later, we call the office and there's no answer. The fact of the matter is the office is only open when we're in election period and the person is here from Athens looking for his votes. So we said, okay, if I can't rely on an infrastructure that simply does not exist in Greece, let's create that infrastructure ourselves. So that'll be the thrust of the types of things that we're going to do in the coming years. Yeah, I'm enthusiastic. I hope it shows.
When you are an intern in the Dukakis Center, don't be afraid to take initiative. Don't be afraid to come up with new ideas. Don't be afraid to suggest things, even if they seem completely wacky. Because part of being an intern and part of is working as a team, and part of working as a team means that you might have an idea that sounds completely crazy, but someone else, when you put forward that idea, someone else will say, aha, we can make it work if we change this or that reminds me of something and it can work. So one of the issues is I'm not suggesting everyone kind of talks all at once all the time, but don't be afraid of putting forward new ideas because the Dukakis team are very much in favour of that. And that's the point, to kind of bring new ideas up and find new ways of doing things, suggest new things.
Yeah, I'm really excited about, now that the Dukakis Center is, you guys are there. I read some of the polities, articles and stuff. It's, it's good to have been part of that.
Public service is to work for the common good. Working for public service is a culture, and it's a conscience, and it has to be built from the very early stages of education in order to try and to young people that working for public service is something that it's extremely rewarding.
We define public service as a commitment to setting aside one's own material interests to work for the good of one's fellow citizens. The notion is as old as democracy itself. Pericles likened it to a spirit of reverence pervading our public acts. More recently, U.S. Congressman Lee Hamilton has claimed public service is not just a way of life, it is a way to live fully. Young people who come to work with us as interns or as volunteers are regularly tasked with explaining to themselves and to a larger public how their projects are a public service. Their endeavor could not be more urgent. Here's what one intern, Simona Ramos, had to say.
I believe that our project has an aim bigger than it appears. I think that we have tried to tell a story and eventually bring people closer together. For me, that is what public service stands for, a combined, vigorous work of diverse people that ultimately strive for the same goal, a better community, better opportunities, and a better life.
I find that young people who care, and that's the majority of young people, have an appetite and a thirst for doing things that we would call public service. There's service to others that you volunteer to do. It could be something very simple like painting a school or doing an awareness program or taking photographs of candidates in the pre-election period and trying to show what it is to be a candidate, what the candidates are actually like. There's so many things that you could do that we would characterize as public service initiatives that it's just a matter of getting someone started and then they'll take off on their own. And what we found is that while it's difficult to define public service to a young person in Greek, using the Greek language, you learn, you master the concept as you engage in public service, such that you don't ask the question anymore, you're ready to explain it to the next person. I'm in awe at how active and how responsible young Greek students can be, and the young people who come from neighboring countries are equally interesting and devoted to what they want to do, and that's impressive. That is certainly the thing that keeps me in Greece.
Well, I don't know of anything that one can do in this world that is more personally fulfilling and satisfying than being in a position where you can make a real difference in the lives of your fellow citizens. And I see that as what politics at its best is all about. And I've had the great good fortune to be able to do that virtually my entire life, both in politics and now teaching public policy and remaining still very active in public affairs, both here in Massachusetts and nationally. And these days I get enormous satisfaction from being able to teach and guide and mentor lots and lots of terrific young people, both here and at UCLA in the wintertime, who I hope and expect are going to be the next generation of public leaders. Mm-hmm. And I know you're trying to do exactly the same kind of thing at Anatolia and ACT. One of the things I try, Davis, you go very hard to help my students understand is that you can do it while setting high standards of integrity for yourself and the people that work for you. And I'd like to think that's something not only I've been able to do, but I think and I hope I've been able to encourage lots of my students and the people who work with me to do that. And, you know, it's not difficult to set high standards of integrity and live by them, at the same time do good things in public life. And I can't think of a better life. And after all, it was the ancient Greeks that first told us, right, that the single most important thing one could do and be was to be an active citizen.
The Dukakis Center has been many things since it was launched 20 years ago. We occasionally call ourselves a think tank, for want of a better word. But in fact, the Dukakis Center is fast becoming a prototype for a new kind of academic and outreach center. Our unique capacity to engage with a diverse set of constituencies in innovative public service initiatives has proven inspirational to professional colleagues in academia, in civil society, and throughout the public and private sectors. Youthful citizens remain our core constituency, as Governor Dukakis would have wanted it. We measure our impact with a simple metric: the countless occasions in which young people we work with embody our values and share our message with their peers around the world. As the Dukakis Center enters its third decade, we will continue to examine the issues that animated Michael Dukakis' long career as a public servant. One thing is certain: Governor Dukakis' personal ethos will remain our lodestar.
What I prize in having met Michael Dukakis, Michael and Kitty, is their loyalty to their values. Now, these are people who have been very, very successful, and they've had moments where the success didn't come. But up and down, they've always had a solid set of values. And that's something I really admire. You don't change simply because you're successful, or you don't lose heart because things haven't gone the way you wanted them to go. And I think that's a lesson that young people can learn from, I think, because you have your ups and downs, right? But you look at this guy, his entire career, he stayed loyal to some very basic principles, and principles that we can admire. And that's why Michael Dukakis is important for me.
For Dukakis Center, I would say that it changed my way of life and my perspective about the politics and about democracy and about everything else that we as human beings need to do for our community. So I encourage everyone from the students present here, because it's our last year being here, to be encouraged and volunteer as much as they can, because in the end, this stays forever.
We will never bring disgrace to this our country by any act of dishonesty or of cowardice. We will fight for the ideals of this our country. We will revere and obey the law. We will strive to quicken our sense of civic duty. Thus, in all these ways, we will transmit this country greater, stronger, prouder, and more beautiful than it was transmitted to us